All right, everybody. Good morning. I hope that you're doing well today. I hope that everybody got to stay inside this weekend when it was 1,000,000 degrees outside. Yeah, it's really hot outside, or it was yesterday and Friday. So I'm glad everybody's here. If I haven't gotten a chance to meet you yet, I think I've met everybody in here so far, but just in case, my name is Dan Venzen. I'm the minister to youth and families, and right now I'm doing music too. I told someone just a second ago, I said, so if you hear some like wrong notes coming out of me while singing, it's because I'm not classically trained in this, okay? Kylie is going to lead us in our call to worship here, so if you all please stand.
All right, I'm going to read the light print and you will respond with the words in bold. Come, you who thirst for grace.
Come, you who hunger for justice.
Come, you who are strangers in a strange land.
Come, you who like a child at home.
Come, for Christ welcomes you to this time and place.
We have come to worship God.
Then let us worship well. I've been held in your hand from the moment that I wake up until I lay my head. I will sing of the goodness of God. And all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so good. With every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God. I love your voice. You have led me through the fire and darkest night. You are close like no other. I've known you as a father. I've known you as a friend. I have lived in the goodness of God. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so good. With every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, I'm surrendered now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. So good. With every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God.
Good job, Kylie.
You give life, you are love, you bring light to the darkness, you give hope, you restore every heart that is broken. and great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise, pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. You give life, you are love, you bring light to the darkness, you give hope, you restore every heart that is broken. And great are you, Lord. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise, we pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise, we pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great are you, Lord. And all the earth will shout your praise. Our hearts will cry, these bones will sing. Great it's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise, we pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise, we pour out our praise. It's your breath in our lungs, so we pour out our praise to you only.
You'll take a seat for us real quick. We're gonna pray here together. One of the things about prayer that I really enjoy is that it is something that's very individual, but something that's also very communal as well. It's something that we are supposed to do on our own and something that pulls us together. So I was wondering this morning if we could take a moment to pray. You don't have to pray with the person next to you or whatnot, but maybe we can try something. Maybe we can pray for the people in our lives. Maybe we can pray for the people next to us. And so I want to give us the time to do that. So I'm going to start us off, and then we're going to have a little bit of time where we can kind of pray by ourselves too. Lord, we thank you for the people in this room. We thank you for the community that they build just by being here. We thank you for the families. We thank you for the moms and dads, for grandparents and aunts and uncles and brothers and sisters, kids. God, that makes us whole. Everybody's represented here, and this is a reminder that we're not alone. So God, I pray for the people in this room. I pray that whatever they're going through right now, Lord, that you may comfort them right now. May you give them confidence, may you give them assurance, and may you remind them that you are God and that you are with them. I want us all to take about 30 seconds and pray for whatever's on your mind right now. Amen. This time we're going to have our scripture readings. So Meredith Hall is going to read our Old Testament passage, and Jeff Vollers is going to read our New Testament passage.
I'll be reading Numbers 13:30 through 33. Then Caleb silenced the people before Moses and said, "We should go up and take possession of the land, for we can certainly do it." But the men who had gone up with him said, "We cannot attack those people. They are stronger than we are." And they spread among the Israelites a bad report about the land they had explored. They said, "The land we explored devours those living in it, and the people we saw there are of great size. We saw the Nephilim there. The descendants of Enoch came from Nephilim. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we looked the same to them."
All right, good morning. Our New Testament passage from 4:12 through 13. I know what it is to be in need. I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation. Whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want, I can do all this through him who gives me strength.
All right. This moment, any kids, come on up. Pastor David has a children's sermon for us.
All right. Well, good morning, friends. All right. What is this? A grasshopper. All right. Now, how many of y'all were listening to our Old Testament reading just now? At the end of that passage, those spies that had been over in the Promised Land, they said, there are giants over in the land, and next to them we look like grasshoppers, right? But what did Caleb and Joshua say? What was their report of the land? Do y'all remember? Did y'all hear it? Interesting. Yeah, their report was, y'all, this is a great place. It's awesome. And even if there are giants, we've got God on our side. So why should we be afraid? You know, sometimes in our lives, we have problems. And next to those problems, we can feel like a grasshopper. Because sometimes those problems just seem so big. And it's in those moments where we can sometimes let our fear get the best of us and take control. But those are the times when we need to really take a step back and remember and think God is with us. And he is bigger, more powerful than anything we can be afraid of. So, what I want y'all to learn is the next time y'all are facing a problem in your lives and you're feeling small like a grasshopper next to those problems, remember who you have in your corner, who's on your side. God. And he will take care of you, no matter what, all right? So we don't need to be afraid, all right? So let's pray. Dear God, we acknowledge that sometimes we let our fears get the best of us in the face of problems and challenges. We start feeling small and insignificant in the face of all of these things, and we forget that we don't have to, because you're right there with us through all of it. And so, God, we just want to pray that you will help us remember when we start to feel small in the face of problems like grasshoppers next to a giant, that you're right there with us. And you will overcome any of our fears and our challenges for us, because you love us. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
You stand, we're going to sing another song here.
Before I spoke a word, you were singing over me. You've been so, so good to me. Before I took a breath, you breathed your life in me. You've been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. When I was your foe, still your love fought for me. You've been so, so good to me. When I felt no worth, you paid it all for me. You've been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God.
Y'all may take a seat there. For my next trick, preaching. All right, everyone. Looks silly, I'm putting my Bible on the ground here, but I've got it written out here, so. All right, so there I was, a little excited, a little scared, and a whole lot of nervous. Monday, August 6th, 2012. I was sitting at a Chuy's restaurant in North Houston with my pastor and my younger brother discussing my future. At the time, I was working for a building materials distribution plant in Houston, but I started to feel a pull into the business of ministry. And I was offered this internship at a Lutheran outdoor ministry organization where I would be employed for 9 months and I would get a $1,000 living stipend. Okay, so the options were quit my full-time job or take this great internship. But that was my thought of that's how I get my foot in the door of ministry, right? So I asked my pastor if he'd have dinner with me to discuss this option that I had in front of me. And you know what he told me? He told me that's a horrible idea. And he said if I came to him after that 9 months and asked him for a job, he'd say, no way. So he said, Dan, would you be interested in going to graduate school, to seminary, to get your master's of divinity? And I told him, yeah, sure. If that option were to present itself, then I'd seriously look into it. You know, I'm not sure how confident or enthusiastic I sounded, but I was, in fact, interested in going to graduate school. He then said to me, he said, Dan, do you ever see yourself getting married? And I said, yeah, sure. If that option were to present itself, then I'd seriously look into it. I'm not sure how confident I sounded or enthusiastic I sounded, but I was, in fact, interested in getting married. So right at that moment, no joke, this is as the story went, right at that moment, this girl who was my age, let's call her Jane, walked up to our table and goes, oh, Bruce, and started, hugging, my pastor, and they were like, apparently they were old friends or something like that. They'd known each other, their families had known each other, and they're exchanging pleasantries, and I'm sitting there. And then she kind of turns, and I realize immediately, I know this girl. I knew her from Texas A&M. She was in an organization that I was in, and I thought, like, oh my goodness, like, what are the chances? And so they're talking, and Bruce asks her, he says, so Jane, tell me, are you married yet? And she turns to me and goes, no, I'm single. And looked right at me when she said that. And I just melted and in my chair because I'm going, oh no. And Bruce goes, well, would you look at that? And so I'm just, so she walks away and I'm squirming in my seat. And I'm stressing out about my future, and then I'm put on the spot about this girl telling me that she's single. My pastor's looking at me all funny, and so she says goodbye, and she walks to her table. And the moment she walks away, Bruce says to me, he says, Dan, you need to go ask her out. And I said, okay, I'll do that. Like, I think I still have her number. I'll call her later. And he said, no, she's here. I think you need to go ask her now. And I said, no, I'm not going to go ask her. I said, I'm here to discuss my future with you, one thing at a time. I'm very nervous right now. I'm very stressed out. I don't know what to do. And he said, Dan, you need to go ask her out right now. So I took a breath. I said, okay, this is the only way he's going to stop, is if I go and do this. So I start walking around this restaurant, and I get about 5 feet away from her when I see her. That's when I kind of like figure out where she's sitting. And like I start making the motion over to her, and she locks eyes with me. And I notice that she's not alone at that table. She's sitting with one other person, and that person is a guy. She is on a date with somebody. And I don't know what to do. I'm standing there 5 feet away from her, and I look at her, and I look at him, and I sort of go, I'm sorry. Jane, would you like to go on a date with me sometime? And she looked at him, and then she looked at me, and she said, I'd love to. Yeah. So I said, all right, cool, I'll call you. So I walk back to my table, and I tell Bruce and my brother what happened, and his jaw hit the ground. He said, I did not think you were actually going to do that. And she said yes, even though she was on a date. And I said, look, you asked me to do that. I said I'd do it, okay? And so, no joke, the next morning, I was enrolling at Truett Seminary, starting classes the following week, because that night he had called up the seminary and got me in, because he thought, like, this guy will do it. If I get him in, he'll go and do it. So I'm convinced that the only reason I'm standing here today is because I had to ask that girl out. And spoiler alert, it didn't work out. That's not Jane right there. So apparently 2 days later, I moved to Waco. But the crazy thing is, August 8th, 2012, I started orientation at seminary. August 8th, 2015, 3 years later, married her right there. Long story short, Long story short to say this. So there the Israelites were, a little excited, a little scared, probably a whole lot of nervous, The Israelites are standing somewhere between controlling their own future and right before fully stepping into God's promise. The Israelites have been wandering in the desert for years and years, and here they are standing on the literal edge of the land that God had promised to them all the way back to the time of Abraham. So Numbers 13, verse 1, and I'm actually going to be reading out of the NRSV because that's the version I had on my desk when I started writing this. So the Lord said to Moses, "Send men to spy out the land of Canaan, which I am giving to the Israelites." And so Moses collects the people that God tells him to collect for this mission, and he gave them these instructions. He said, "Go up into the Negeb and go into the hill country and see what the land is like, and whether the people who live in it are strong or weak, whether they are few or many, and whether the land they lie in is good or bad, and whether the towns that they live in are unwalled or fortified, and whether the land is rich or poor, and whether there are trees in it or not. Be bold, and bring some of the fruit of the land." To me, this seems like the exciting part for the Israelites. Their wandering in the wilderness seems to be coming to a close. The promised land that God was giving to them, the promised land, the land that God was giving us someday in the future, well, that land is right in front of them, and that day has come. We took Eden to Disney World for one day. And let me tell y'all, if y'all don't know, Disney World is the promised land for Eden. Eden is as girl as they come, all right? Her favorite color is pink, her second favorite color is purple, and her absolute favorite thing is princesses. Don't ask us how many times we've let her watch Frozen or Little Mermaid or Cinderella, Snow White, Sleeping Beauty. If you can take a guess, triplet, okay? And that's right, you guessed it, we're great parents who let our kids watch this so much TV, all right? If you're ever worried about that, just look at us. We let her watch a lot of princess movies. So we got to the Magic Kingdom about 45 minutes before the park opened, and there we were, standing in the largest crowd I've ever seen, back to back, front to front, shoulder to shoulder, and just everybody's here. I hate crowds, all right? So in the midst of me going, "Hey, person next to me, take one giant step back, please," in the midst of that, I was doing what the Israelites were doing, scouting out the land. I was taking note of, all right, what's up ahead there? When we get in, do I want to go left or do I want to go right? What's the best method for me to do? And I had my little app on my phone, and I was going like, okay, first we'll go to the Little Mermaid ride, and then we'll go to Winnie the Pooh, and then this and that, scouting out the land. This is what I imagine it was like for the Israelites. Not that they were going into Disney World, but that they were going into the promised land. This is the land that God was giving to them. This was the land that would be home for their kids, their grandkids, their great-grandkids. This is the part of God's great promise materialized in front of them. And their job right now is to scout it out. So what does that mean for you, and what does that mean for me? Well, here's my thoughts here. May we not forget that God is always bringing us out of our old ways and into new ways. God was with the Israelites in Egypt, and he brought them into the wilderness. God was with the Israelites in the wilderness, and he is bringing them into Canaan. And we can assume that God will be with the Israelites in Canaan, and that he will bring them into something new in the land of Canaan. Our walk with God is never complete. God is always with us. God is always moving. And so when God moves, our job is to move with him. He calls us to move. I'm not sure where you are in your life right now, but maybe you've been there for a long time. Maybe not physically somewhere a long time, maybe metaphorically you've been somewhere for a long time. Maybe it's time to start spying out lands that are in front of you, seeing what the options are in front of you. Maybe you've gotten comfortable where you're at. Maybe God is calling you to step into his promises anew. God's promise, you see, it's always bringing us into a land that he has prepared for us. Canaan, y'all, Canaan is big. It's big enough to house multitudes of generations. Okay, so we don't have to wander in the wilderness anymore. We can now wander in God's promise. We can wander in God's promised land. And so with
Now I can pick up my Bible. With you, and as you can see, like, this is where the story of Numbers 13 comes into play right here. This is how much of God's call on their life happens afterwards. Like, this is just the beginning of them entering into God's promise. There is more to God's promise than setting up camp somewhere. So the spies go into the land for 40 days, and they see the Anakites are there. They find some grapes, pomegranates, and figs there. And at the end of the 40 days, they come back and they give report to Moses and Aaron, and they show the fruits of the land to everyone and say, "We came to the land which you sent us. It flows with milk and honey, and this is its fruit." Yet the people who live in the land, they're strong. And the towns are fortified and very large, and besides, we saw the descendants of Anak there. The Amalekites live in the land of the Negeb. The Hittites, the Jebusites, the Amorites, and the mosquito bites live in the hill. It's my favorite Bible joke there, y'all. Live in the hill country, and the Canaanites live by the sea along the Jordan. The report starts off great. The report starts off in the way you'd expect God's promised land to be described, with milk and honey. It's a great place. However, it doesn't take long for some of that goodness to be overshadowed. You know what's great? Milk and honey. That's great. You know what's not great? The Amalekites, the Hittites, the Jebusites. Oh my. You may not have any real or tangible reference for what that people group was like, but the Israelites did. They feared these people enough that these people started to make God's promise, these people started to make milk and honey look a little less enticing. Can you think of anything in your life that has made the milk and honey of God seem less enticing to you? Fully stepping into God's promise will require you, and it will require me, to face some of our biggest fears head on. Fully stepping into God's promise will require you, and it will require me, to trust and believe that the Lord will fight for you, as Scripture says in Exodus 14:14. We have to trust that God will fight for us, even in our biggest fears. No one really wants to face our biggest fears, do we? In fact, we do our best to avoid our biggest fears. I'm afraid of spiders. If I see a spider, I'm going to do my best to avoid that spider. I'll call an exterminator. If you don't like heights, you're going to do your best to avoid ladders. So if you don't like a group of people, you're going to do your best to make sure that their group, their circle, and your circle don't ever overlap. But here's the thing, if you and I don't step into God's promises, we will never get to see God be God for us. If we do not face our biggest fears, our biggest insecurities, and not just character flaws, but sometimes our character swings and misses. If we mistake our heart pounding out of our chest as evidence that it's time to be fearful, instead of evidence for it's time to be faithful, then we are not fully asking God to be our God and for us to be his people. And here it is. In walks Caleb. Caleb might be my favorite character in the Bible. In this moment of transition, in this moment of excitement, in this moment of nervousness, in this moment of hesitation, he reminds us of who God is and who we are. In this moment, he encourages all of us to ask out that girl right in the middle of a restaurant. You know, he's that encouragement, says that you can do this. You do not have to be afraid. Caleb quieted the people before Moses and said, "Let's go. Let's go up at once and occupy it, for we are well able to overcome." Ladies and gentlemen, find yourself a friend like Caleb. Find yourself someone who, when you are about to balk at stepping out in faith, this person will remind you that you can be confident in who God is. Caleb is the best cheerleader I think that you're going to come across in the Bible. And when all you hear in your life is grumbling and complaining and murmuring, sometimes all you need to hear to step out in faith is one crazy loon telling you that you've got this. I mean, look at Caleb's dedication here. So if you keep following where I'm at here, and I wish I could tell you exactly, but I didn't write that down in my manuscript here. You can see this. I mean, look at his dedication. He says, let's go. We can do this. And he's met with everyone saying, no, we are not able to go up against these people, for they are stronger than we are. Then the spies they brought to the Israelites an unfavorable report of the land that they had spied out, saying, the land that we have gone through as spies is a land that devours its inhabitants. And all the people that we saw there are of great size. There we saw the Nephilim, and to ourselves we seemed like grasshoppers. And so we seemed to them. And everyone yells, oh no, we should have stayed in Egypt. We should have stayed in the wilderness. And sidebar, if we ever find ourselves saying that we should go back and live the way that we used to, we should go back to our old ways, that's usually a sign, at least in the Old Testament, that the Israelites are doing something wrong. So if we ever find ourselves saying we should go back and do things the way that we used to, maybe we're doing something a little bit wrong. Maybe. I'm not exactly sure, but that's a sidebar. And they start to choose a captain among them so that they can all go back to Egypt. And even after all that complaining and all that whining and all that discouragement, Caleb stands up and says, the land that we went through as spies is exceedingly good land. If the Lord is pleased with us, he will bring us into this land and give it to us, a land that is flowing with milk and honey. Only do not rebel against the Lord, and do not fear the people of the land, for they are no more than bread for us. That's intense there. Their protection is removed from them, and the Lord is with us. Do not fear them. But the whole congregation threatened to stone him. And the Lord said to Moses, how long will this people despise me, and how long will they refuse to believe in me, in spite of all the signs that I have done among them? The whole congregation threatened to stone him. Have you ever threatened someone for trying to follow where they believed God was leading them? Have you ever threatened to cut ties with somebody because they were trying to do something that scared you? I think if we're all honest with ourselves, I think we all do that from time to time. When things get scary, instead of following God to fight for us against our fears, we run back to places of familiarity, places that God has moved us past, places that God has brought us out of. So brothers and sisters, if what someone else is doing is not of God, let me tell you, it will fail on its own accord. It will. But if what someone else is doing is of God, you and I, there's nothing that we can do that will be able to stop it. We cannot fault someone for trying to faithfully confront the things that scare us most. We cannot fault someone for trying to faithfully confront an addiction, a fear, an insecurity, a flaw, a sin, an issue that scares us the most. If we let our fears be the primary dictators of where we go and where we don't go, then we will never enter into the land that God has promised to you and that he has promised to me. Numbers 14, verse 20 says this, "Then the Lord said, I do forgive, just as you have asked. Nevertheless, as I live and as all the earth shall be filled with the glory of the Lord, none of the people who have seen my glory and the signs I did in Egypt and in the wilderness shall see the land that I swore to give to their ancestors. None of those who despise me shall see it. But my servant Caleb, because he has a different spirit and has followed me wholeheartedly, I will bring into the land into which he went." Why did Caleb get to go into the land and no one else? Caleb was brought into that land because Caleb was about that land. Caleb got to go into the land because Caleb went into that land himself. Not just physically, but metaphorically, emotionally, spiritually, he went into that land. Caleb got to go into the land of milk and honey because he was about the milk and honey. And so if we want to be brought into the land that's flowing with milk and honey, we also have to be about the milk and honey of God's kingdom. If we are not about the milk and honey, what makes us think that we'd enjoy living in a land of milk and honey? If we don't want to be a part of the kingdom of heaven things, why do we think that God would drag us into the kingdom of heaven? If we want to live in the land of forgiveness, then the way we live must prioritize forgiveness over blaming and over grudges. If we want to live in the land of mercy, then the way we live must prioritize mercy over revenge and over retribution. If we want to live in the land of harmony, then the way we choose to live must prioritize unity over discord. If we want to live in a land where faith is stronger than fear, then we must live in a way that prioritizes faith over fear. So what do we do today? Well, we start today. We take a look around and we assess the world that we're in. Where are our threats? Where is the milk and honey? We remember that God is never done leading us into new places. We acknowledge our fears and we tell people what scares us. We come together as a community and we address those things. We encourage those who need encouragement. We stick together. We allow God to be our God and allow Him to lead us to face our fears together. We make our lives about the milk and honey. We make our lives about the promises of God and not the fears of the world and not the fears that we have. For God will fight for us. So I don't know where you're at today. I don't know what season of life you're in. But I know that there's probably something that you're facing right now that is standing between you and the promise of God. And I know that you've probably got two options: to shy away from facing that giant, those giants that live in the land, or to follow a God who runs towards those giants for you. To all of you, I say what Caleb said to the Israelites: let's go at once and occupy this land. Let's go at once and occupy God's promises. For we are able to overcome it. The land, y'all, it's exceedingly good. The Lord will bring us into the land that flows with milk and honey. Do not fear the people of the land, for they are no more than bread for us. Maybe that's a little bit dark to end on there on that one. But if you need someone to pray for you right now, this is the time to do it. Band, come on up here if we're going to be playing again here. If you need someone to pray with right now, this is the time to do that. David, he's up here. Buster's up here. My wife's up here. Jody's up here. All of us are people that you can pray with. You don't have to pray with anyone, but I don't think anyone's going to be like, no, you can't pray with me right now or something like that. I think we should embrace the awkwardness, faith over awkwardness sometimes. So if you need to pray for somebody, let's go for it. But also, if you want to pray by yourself right now, that's great. No one's going to judge you for that too. But this is your time to move if God is moving you. Okay, so we're going to sing one more song, and I hope that this would be a time where you could respond to however God is speaking to you. And we'll sing.
Lord, I come, I confess, bowing here, I find my rest, and without you, I fall apart. You're the one that guides my heart. Lord, I need you, oh, I need you. Every hour I need you, my one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. Where sin runs deep, your grace is more. Where grace is found is where you are. And where you are, Lord, I am free. Holiness is Christ in me. And where you are, Lord, I am free. Holiness is Christ in me. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. So teach my song to rise to you. When temptation comes my way, and when I cannot stand, I'll fall on you. Jesus, you're my hope and stay. And when I cannot stand, I'll fall on you. Jesus, you're my hope and stay. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you.
Let's do that chorus again.
Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you.
All right, y'all may have a seat. David, come on up and give us our announcements, opportunities.
All right, let me bring this down from that giant who was just up here. All right. Well, it's been a great morning of worship, made all the better because each of y'all were here today, so thank you for being here. A couple of quick announcements to go over. You've seen the colorful bags in the windows out here. We're filling those gift bags by September 11th as a way of showing appreciation and thanks for the teachers and staff of our Child Development Center. So if you or your Sunday school class wants to contribute by bringing items that you can put in those bags over the next couple of weeks, let's go ahead and do it and get those bags filled up because they do a wonderful job and we want to show them how much we appreciate them. We're still taking up collections for our food pantry, and there's a list in the bulletin from the sanctuary over there of items like fruit cups, granola bars, protein bars, crackers, mac and cheese. There's all kinds of things that we could use for the food pantry. So keep bringing those supplies in. That's a wonderful ministry that we have with the elementary school across the street. Our Wednesday night supper this week is I call it the most dangerous Wednesday night of the year. It's build your own taco salad plate. So make sure you RSVP for that. And then afterwards we have adult programming and children's and youth programming. And I want you to keep your eyes open, adults. There are three classes coming up in September that y'all might be interested in. There's an estate planning one on September 13th. There's one on September 20th about addiction, and then one on the 27th of September about autism. So that might be something you're interested in as well. And we're about to have a business meeting here in just a second. So if you're a guest and you don't want to stick around for a business meeting, now's your chance to slip out if you want. But otherwise, I'm going to call Buster up as brings us into a business meeting.
Can I give us a benediction before we do that? Sure. All right. For anybody who does jump out, may the Lord be with you. May the Lord bless you. And may you have just a very confident week in who God has created you to be.
All right, thanks. I promise if you want to stay as a visitor, we don't have bad business meetings. So what we're going to have, I'll call us to order here. We've got 8 candidates to vote for, so if the guys will go ahead and start handing out ballots. What we've got to have is, if you can get the ballots as well as while we're and listen at the same time. We're voting for 8 deacons, and 66% yes votes to be deacon. We have 8 positions, so any of them that meet the 66% will be deacons. If you don't vote for somebody, that's the same as a no, okay? So what I'd like to do is tell you that, one, we interviewed everybody for an hour, and everybody is qualified to be a deacon, and everybody's qualified for the role. So I encourage you to do that. They've met the criteria. Trust the process. If you, and confirm them to be deacon, unless you know there's a reason they shouldn't be elected deacon. Parents, I'd like to ask you to help your children. Obviously, any member can vote, so if children are voting, help your children, make sure they understand that so that